Good evening, everyone. This is Mike, and it's time for another episode of Genre Files. And the genre this week is horror films, horror films. So I've chosen this English film from 1960 called City of the Dead, starring Christopher Lee, whose face you see on the cover there. City of the Dead is about witchcraft. Now, this is an English-made film, all English players, but it takes place in America, 17th century New England, where there was hysteria about witches. One of the not-so-bright spots in American history. Women were executed for witchcraft. And so what's interesting about this movie is you have all these English players, including Christopher Lee, and they're all doing American accents. And they do a pretty good job. Although every once in a while you might hear a certain word or phrase that comes out with an English twinge to it. But Christopher Lee does a very convincing American accent. He's a very talented guy. So at the beginning of the film, we have this woman named Elizabeth Selwyn, who is being executed for witchcraft. And in the case of Miss Selwyn in this story, she is actually a witch. And while she's being set fire to, she's cursing the village. Now, you've seen this before in a very famous Italian horror film called Black Sunday. Very same thing. Woman who is actually a witch and is very evil is being executed, and she curses the people and her own family while she's being burned. So in a way, this same theme has been used many times in different horror films. This is a very good and very atmospheric movie. So even if it's somewhat derivative, don't let that stop you from watching it and enjoying it. So we start in the 17th century, and then after we see the execution, we jump to the 20th century, and we see Christopher Lee's face as a professor in a college class. He's teaching a course about witchcraft, and he's talking about Elizabeth Selwyn being burned. He's saying, "Burn, witch, burn." Of course, that's the title of another horror film that came out the following year. Anyway, so one of Christopher Lee's students, played by Venetia Stevenson, is writing a paper on witchcraft, and he advises her to go to this same village. It's called Whitewood, and investigate the surrounding area and the people, and look at archives and all that sort of thing to get a real, a good source of correct information about what happened. So she decides to go there, not knowing that Christopher Lee was actually born in Whitewood, and that he is also a witch. Now, the thing about this movie is there's no mystery for the viewer. Everything about the people in this story is revealed to us immediately. We know what Christopher Lee is all about. She goes back to the village. We see that Elizabeth Selwyn has somehow been granted eternal life by Lucifer, which was her prayer at the beginning of the film. When she's cursing the rest of the people, she's asking Lucifer to give her life so that she can spend all of her existence serving him, celebrating the Black Mass, and just doing all kinds of evil stuff. So anyway, she has been granted that wish by Lucifer. So she is back. Her name is now Mrs. Newless, not sort of like Selwyn spelled backward, not quite. And she's she operates a hotel in Whitewood, and she has some of the people around her have also been consecrated to the devil, so they are resurrected as well. It's all very creepy, but we know exactly what's going on. Now, when Venetia Stevenson goes to this village, she doesn't know what's going on. So the viewer is watching her going into this situation and wanting to scream out, "Don't do it! Stay home! Don't go around that corner! Don't open that door!" It's one of those kinds of films. But still, it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of watching it. So things start to happen. As we find out in the story, the witches in this town, they have this yearly ritual where on the eve of the Feast of Candlemas, which is Candlemas is February 2nd, so the day before is February 1st, they have to sacrifice a young woman during a Black Mass offered to Satan, and then they offer someone else on the witch's Sabbath, which is a few weeks later or something like that. So that's why Venetia Stevenson has been directed to go to this village so that she can be the person who is sacrificed. And so when she doesn't return back to her home, her brother and her fiance go to that village to find out what's going on. And they get involved with another young woman played by an actress named Betta St. John, who is the granddaughter of the minister of the town, Christian minister, whose church has been standing empty for quite a long time because everybody has turned to witchcraft in the entire village, practically everyone. And this woman just came back to sort of take over her grandmother's antique shop, bookshop, and sort of get everything straightened out. So she's not completely sure about what's going on in this village. She's listened to what's going on from her grandfather, and she can see around her that things are very strange, but she's not really convinced, at least at the beginning, that anything is wrong with this village. So what you have in this village, it's got a great set. I don't know exactly where they filmed it. Maybe it was all done on a studio set. You've never seen so much fog and mist in your entire life. I mean, it's about 4 feet deep from the ground. It's wonderful. It's just flying around everywhere. So it's got a lot of really great atmosphere. Black and white cinematography. What I find interesting about this, a little bit of discrepancy in the story. The church in the town is a Protestant church, which in the 17th century in New England, it was mostly a Protestant atmosphere. So these people would not be celebrating Candlemas, which is a very Catholic feast day. They wouldn't even recognize Candlemas Day, but they're acting as though that's an established thing in this culture. And they're also talking about celebrating the Black Mass, which of course in Protestant culture and religion they don't do. I'm probably getting much too detailed here. Anyway, it's a very good movie. It's a lot of fun to watch, even though as the viewer you pretty much know everything that's going to happen. But you still get to see Christopher Lee, tall, thin as a rail. The description that he gave himself in his autobiography, tall, dark, and gruesome, was never more apt than it is in this movie, and he's really terrific. All the other actors are good, believable people. The woman who plays Elizabeth Selwyn is really a trip. She's very, very good. I've never seen her in any other movie, so I don't know anything about her. I need to search her out. Now, this movie has an alternate title called A Horror Hotel, which is what it was called when it was finally released in America 3 years after it was made, 1963. I don't know why it took so long to get it sent to the United States, but for some reason it did. It's actually a very cool movie, and I would say, if you just want to enjoy an old-fashioned horror film with a lot of mist, swirling mist, gothic atmosphere, and Christopher Lee at the center of it all, I think City of the Dead is a good place to start. And it's still not 12 o'clock yet, so I'm almost ready to get this posted. Let me know. The reason why I decided to watch this again is because a couple of days ago, my friend Frank Smith, one of my Facebook friends, who's also a YouTube friend under a different name, he posted a still from this, from City of the Dead on his Facebook page, and I thought it was so cool because I hadn't thought about the movie in a long time, but it made me want to watch it again, so it was a perfect choice for Genre Files. So anyway, I guess I'm done talking. Let me know if you've seen this movie, and good night.